All right. She's ready to start. Who are we missing? Did anybody?
Folks,
I think Sue's coming. I'm not positive about that.
Okay,
I think so. She emailed me saying she could come.
great. Yeah, I thought I saw that too. How's everybody holding up? Getting good vacation time, I hope,
Next week.
next week.
Mhm.
We
And
canceled
Molly,
our.
how's the new house?
It's so good.
Oh.
Want to do a quick tour? Should I take you on a quick tour? I just want to show you the living room, okay? It's really special.
Okay.
This
Well,
is
we're waiting for Sue
recorded.
before we can start.
Everybody in Winona, I hope you enjoy this tour of my new house. Okay. Now, I guess it's like a little dark, but just look
Look at
at
that brick.
this.
It's so cool.
We got those big windows. We got some good furniture. How about that shelf unit? How about my fireplace, which is now functional? And there's this little built-in planter. Oh, anyway,
So,
Congratulations.
you with the rest, but it is very special, and I'm looking forward to coming home to this place when school starts. So
Yeah, I bet.
congratulations on the new house.
thank
That's
you. I hope you enjoyed the tour just now.
All right. Well, so we're missing Sue. Who else? in the
Chris.
crew?
Chris Conrad.
Good point. Okay. Well, we have a quorum. And I think we're good to go in terms of time. So how about if we get going, and if Sue and Chris arrive, they arrive. So I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Sustainability Committee, Thursday, August 12th, 2021. There's no need to do a roll call because we can see who's here and who's not. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from June 10th and July 8th of 2021? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of July 8th and July 21.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Any corrections, changes, additions? No? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Opposed, minutes carry. I don't see anybody else here to make appearances tonight, so we'll move right into unfinished business in our outreach. You want to give us a recap of Renew Wisconsin?
Yeah, I thought the webinar went really well. I gave a quick intro to some of the city's stuff. And then Sam from Renew gave a presentation about both sort of the solar installation process in general, and then the group by benefits specifically, which was great. And there were also some of the solar installers were on the webinar as well to answer like specific technical questions, which we had at least one person in the audience who had some very specific questions and was able to get them all answered, which was really great. I think Sam had said that there were about 17 people signed up, which I thought was pretty good. We only had about 6 or 7 people actually attend, but the recording is now up both on the Madison website, and I've linked it on the Sustainable Winona page and posted about it on our Facebook page. So it's there as a resource. And if you know of anyone who's looking for that, they can always go back and watch the recording.
Great,
But,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Just for some perspective, we've hosted meetings like that in person at the technical college in the past. And we typically get somewhere between, 6 and 12 people to attend. So those attendance numbers aren't too far off of what you would have for an in-person event. And the fact that it's also recorded for viewing later probably means you'll reach a larger audience than we did with our face-to-face meetings. So I'd call that a success.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, Ken. Thank you. Great. And we don't have a National Night Out recap because, of course, it was rescheduled due to the weather. And it's this weekend. I know Molly, I'm guessing we probably still need some people to sign up to help out with that, do we not?
Yeah, I know a few people had signed up to help this past week. And yeah, Molly will be out of town. I will also be out of town, so I can't help, but I thought it'd be, if we can figure out today, or if people know if they're available, that would be great, because I'll just have to coordinate with whoever is going to be there on getting like the materials and the tent, which are all here at City Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, Sue said she would be able to do it again. I think Sarah, you said you might have some availability as well.
Yeah, I'm open.
Great.
I didn't click your link to sign up yet, but
That's okay.
I can.
And I think it's a good idea maybe to talk about it tonight and just see when people are available. It would be really great to have some new people in the rotation, especially since Elisa and I will both be gone.
I'm
So
going to be gone as well. I had signed up for this,
That's great.
but then right after I signed up, they canceled it. So, but unfortunately, I'm going to be traveling to the metropolis of Mazomanie all next week for training. And I won't be back in time.
I think Meso's fun. You'll enjoy
It
it.
it is fun. And the training that I'm doing is for my wilderness first responder work. So it's all a lot of simulation outside of disasters, as if you're in the wilderness.
Very fun.
Yep.
Teresa, do you think you'll be around to potentially?
I am around, but I also know that I'm kind of like an old face on the committee, but I'm happy to fill in.
Ken, I think she's looking at you in this case.
I'm just looking at the calendar to try and figure out what day that is. That's Tuesday the 17th, right?
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Correct.
unfortunately, I'm booked up that night.
Dan, you turned your camera off, but we are putting you on the spot now.
I have commitments at night as well.
Okay. Well, maybe we can reach out to Chris and see if he's available as well.
Yeah, and I think that this is certainly one of those scenarios, like if we wanted to reach out to other folks that we know that are passionate about this work. It's not like what we hand out there is so technical that like Pat Howell might be, if she's around, might be game to jump in, even though she's no longer on the committee. And
I'll send a note to Lisa Gunlock and Pat Howell. Any others that you can think of?
Mark.
oh, Mark Buffett, yeah,
Okay.
that'd be great.
So I will send the sign up to Sarah, Teresa, Sue, Chris, Lisa, Pat, and Mark, and just hope that at least the majority of slots can get filled. It's really not a very long time period, so hopefully people can break it up in a way that's comfortable.
And we have the materials set to go, whatever materials we're handing out.
Yeah, there's a box of stuff, both like adopt a storm drain, flyers, stickers. We've got some bike bells and other things to give out. So there's a whole box of it. I can leave it sitting like on my desk so that whoever is on one of those first shifts can, I guess it starts at 5:30. So
that's gonna be a problem, isn't it?
yeah, I don't know if someone's available to like come pick that stuff up earlier in the day on Tuesday when like Brad or Aline or someone else might be around, just to show them where it is.
Elisa, I'll loop you into the email and maybe somebody can be a point person and coordinate with you.
Okay.
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 Great. Fall festival. What about the fall festival? Are we doing the fall festival? What's the date of the fall festival? It's listed here on the agenda.
I thought it was maybe the 8th October. Ooh, I have to look it up.
Let's see.
Looks like
Yeah, I think October
18th through the
18th.
20th. Yeah, that looks right.
Yeah.
Well, that was last year maybe, but either way, I think we're going to be looking at that weekend-ish.
Mhm. So I think it would be similar to National Night Out. You know, we'll have a tent, a table with some of our outreach materials.
But does it go on for several days as opposed to several hours?
It would be, I would think, akin to the community festival.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't think we would necessarily have to be there every day. I could certainly check in with Missy from Parks and Rec and see if there's like, if it is over multiple days, if there's a, I don't know, if there's like a day that it's going to be a little busier, that might be a better time for us to table there. And we could choose, you know, a few hours to be there.
So how about if since it's somebody game or I'd be game actually to check in with Missy about the actual dates and the hours and that kind of stuff and try to figure out what the best time date would be.
That'd be great.
And then you guys could work from there. I will not be here for the September meeting of this group. I'll be away the whole month of September. And I'm on too far of a difference in terms of time zone to be able to check in. So, but I can, I'll certainly do the legwork ahead of time. So that you guys can talk about it next month. How's that?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I think in theory, I'll be around so that I can be back in the game for that. So
Great.
thanks. Thank you, everybody.
Sure. So the next thing is the 2021-22 project priorities discussion. So before I make a recommendation based on the survey, I thought I would just get people's reaction when you read through the survey. And any takeaways, anything that struck you in the survey as you looked at the results?
How many people
Nothing?
responded?
Huh?
How many people responded?
It was a total of 10.
Okay.
All of us, there was one person beyond us that I asked to go ahead and take the survey, and that was Lynn.
Good.
So like, for instance, you may have noticed a comment about centralizing our water softening
Right.
in the survey, and that came from her. And in fact, there was an article in the paper about it. I don't know if you noticed that, but there was an article in the paper within the last couple of weeks about it. But beyond that, it was all of us. So any reactions to the survey overall? No. Okay. So let me just as I went through the survey, you know, it certainly seemed like the most, you know, highest importance to people as it related to a roadmap, if you will, for our march to clean energy. We're advocating as necessary for renewal targets, which was that first question B, an analysis of municipal rooftop solar to establish a plan replace improvements or replacement, which was C. D, which was analyze and advocate for improvements in energy efficiency in city facilities, a roadmap funding and financing for the streetlight LEDs, and participation on an ad hoc committee for a new highly efficient green public safety building. And ultimately, for me anyway, my takeaway was it really all boils down to what Ken said last meeting, which is it's really about having a roadmap. All of those things would fit into a roadmap to 100% clean energy, right? recognizing that the landscape is always changing and hopefully for the better with the recent passage of the infrastructure bill and hopefully some other, the reconciliation bill that's coming out federally. But still, we've made this commitment as a community, as everyone here knows, and we need to put ourselves in a position to have more of a roadmap so that we can advocate as appropriate in terms of the city budget. We can act as it relates to potential grants. We can react as it relates to getting in on installations that MGE might be doing in terms of an RER, et cetera. So the LED streetlights, I mean, all of it. So at least that's certainly what spoke to me in terms of that first question. Does that make sense to people? I mean, it was broken out into little bits, but I think all those bits kind of roll up into the same thing, right? Of having that roadmap as a municipality.
There's lots of ways to get to a low carbon footprint or a low carbon energy footprint anyways. I think having a roadmap helps us determine what the strategy is going to be so that we can be a little bit more proactive in what kind of initiatives we want to pursue and also make sure that we, do it in the most cost effective way.
Right.
If the goal is just to be carbon free, we could just pay MG&E to install a bunch of solar and we could be carbon free next year. It's just going to be a big hit to the taxpayers, right?
Right. Right.
So that's where I think having a strategic plan to figure out the most efficient and cost effective way to do that is in our best interest.
Right. And not only that,
it also makes it easy when things do change or grant opportunities come up, it makes it easier to respond to them because you've got a plan that you can draw from to write those proposals.
Right. Yeah, and you may not know, Ken, that a few years ago when we passed the 100% clean energy, Brad actually ran the numbers at the time and reported out that if the city just increased their budget by $16,669.99, which is now indelibly etched into my brain, obviously, because only Brad could come out with a number like that. That if we just increased it by that and bought all green power tomorrow, went 100% green power tomorrow, we'd be done. We could say as a municipality, we were at 100% clean energy.
Yep. But you're not really any more efficient than you were before.
Exactly.
It's kind of like the homeowner that cuts down all the trees on their lakefront so they have a pretty view of the Capitol and then pays to plant some trees in the rainforest, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You've mitigated your impact, but the net effect on Winona is pretty crummy,
Right. Right. So anyway, so to me that says, roadmap. The second question, which was around community engagement, obviously the very first one came out highest, which was robust campaigns with a whole host of other people that are doing good work and essentially partnering with them as opposed to kind of creating our own initiatives or our own programs, and just I guess that drumbeat, if you will, and then the third section, which was about internal and external policies, the high ones, again, I just went through and highlighted, but the high ones were exploring and developing a sustainable development policy, revising their zoning ordinances to allow for more flexibility around housing, more sustainable housing, advocating for inclusion of sustainable purchases and practices in department reports, and of course, advocating and identifying funding for halftime coordinator. Those were the 4 that came up as the high one. So I guess I'm wondering what people would think. First of all, thank you all for taking the survey. I think it really helped parse through what's important. I mean, there were a number of things like, for instance, the Winona Business Initiative that we started now, I don't even know how many years ago, in terms of that survey, and never got off the ground, that just didn't even register for everybody. So, and again, it's not to say that all of these things aren't important, but I think it's important to parse through what is significant. So with that said, what would people think about establishing effectively 3 work groups? One being around creating the roadmap, one being around community engagement, and one being around policy. And those and the work group, and those work groups would be chaired by a member of this committee, or members of this committee, but they would be chaired by a member of the committee. And then we could pull in people from the community, like Lynn, like other people that we know are invested in this work, with the idea being that those 3 work groups would focus on what are those priorities, and really go to town in terms of kind of putting together mini strategic plans, if you will, or mini annual plans. The roadmap might be more of a strategic plan, but for the other things, more of a annual plan, if you will, to accomplish what's listed here. Decide, like, for instance, as an example, as it relates to the policy, I mean, it goes without saying that we all think that funding for a halftime coordinator is really critical. But beyond that, it might be this year we focus on creating a sustainable development policy and getting that through, the city council.
Can I interject, Nancy?
Yeah.
I don't want to run contrary to your suggestion, but one of the conversations that we've had many times as a committee is just that we get mired in too many things.
Yeah.
I would recommend, and I'll just put this out as my personal preference, just because I have some ideas about it, and we've already kind of talked about ideas related to this, but I think we should have one goal for the upcoming year, not divide into work groups, just work as a team and focus on policy. We, not only with sustainable development, as you were talking about, but how we can have an impact on policy that not only extends to, sustainability practices, but also falls in line with our DEI commitments as a committee. So for example, I talked with Mary and Brian this morning about our RFP process and how state law mandates that, for example, like with road projects and other public works utilities projects, often it's just you have to take the lowest bid. But for independent contracts, like for example, our transit RFP, which we just approved, we could have the sustainability recommend a qualification-based matrix that also includes things like electric vehicles or Black-owned businesses or woman-owned businesses, or something where we can recommend a matrix by which RFPs specifically related to those policies, we could have an impact on how people are incorporating necessarily sustainable and eco-friendly commitments in their contracts. So that's just one example. But I think that would be a very tangible way that we could have a discussion, not only as a committee, but at the council level, and really affect some change. And I think if we focus on one thing like that, focus in the direction of policy, we could still each take, on a project or two together as a team. But I just fear dividing up into work groups and focusing on multiple different facets of this. I think we're just going to get lost in the muck again. And I want to make sure that we are providing some tangible things to the rest of our city departments, even if they're small. But one of the things the survey said was like, we want to see these small, easy to accomplish things happening instead of more of the pie in the sky things that are harder to visualize and to put your hands on. So I'm just putting that to the committee as food for thought. I think that would be a very achievable and interesting goal. I think we already have some groundwork for different policies and procedures that we could tackle and try to influence through other departments. But obviously, I'm open to suggestions, and this is, contrary to kind of what you were outlining. So I will just say that I'm flexible about what we end up doing, but I think this might be a good direction or a good sort of strategy versus divide and conquer.
Okay. Teresa?
Ollie, can you give a few more examples of policy that you could imagine us influencing? I also think that's important. I don't know if I'm yet convinced that it's the most important thing, but perhaps if you had some examples, I could better understand what you're driving at.
And maybe it's not policy, maybe it's the roadmap or something, but one thing is basically my idea. But for example, we're talking about how to more appropriately care for and maintain native burial mounds in the community. So we could work to implement with parks a policy that establishes clear rules about how to maintain and be respectful of those areas. So that's kind of one that we've started talking about and will continue to talk about. As I mentioned, the RFP process, maybe including more of a qualification-based matrix for different case-by-case, on a case-by-case basis, how we can incorporate those things into building projects or, other contract engagements that aren't dependent upon the state mandate about lowest bid.
So are you saying that you would some of this work affect municipal ordinances eventually?
Yes.
Okay. Or is that exactly what you're talking about?
Well, yeah. So policies, meaning, regulations for permits, like if we're going to demand XYZ for permits, or as you were saying, ordinances, if you're going to build something or, change something, you have to adhere with different codes. I just think that that's something we've also talked about in the past. And I believe, Elisa, you've talked about looking through ordinances and things like that. But to me, that would be, something that we already have in front of us. That would be an easy thing to look through and manipulate and kind of see how we could update it or align it with our goals a little bit more progressively. I mean, I think we're kind of behind in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So
is it possible that conversation about, just in my experience with the school district, we did decide to move forward with a very bold project, and we just shot for the moon. And in my experience, it has re-energized our group, gave us purpose, gave us deadlines, specific tasks, assignments, due dates, an end date to the project. I mean, that's important too. A project has a start and an end. I mean, people need to know that there's a day when they'll be able to, relax and not work so hard all the time. So that project base was in my experience invigorating to the committee. And as we work on this project, ideas for policy are forming, and it sort of feeds into it for the next project. I don't want to bite off more than we can chew, but I would not be opposed to having a policy committee, concurrent with another committee.
Yeah,
I don't
and
think we need to
I
choose
love
one.
what you're saying about the deadlines
Yeah.
and your expectations
Yeah.
is great. And it doesn't have to be policy, but I just, the idea of splitting up into different groups and managing 3 major projects, that just feels very overwhelming to me. And I think we've had difficulty with that in my experience, in my time on the committee, and I have not been on for as
Yeah.
long as anyone else here. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I think that that's super valid input. And again, I'm flexible on it. I just don't want to. So like, if you're saying pick something else, but we have,
The
this
final, so
and
just
then
final
policy
question.
doesn't come out of it,
Yeah, so just final question, Molly, and then Dan had his head up. So I think I misunderstood you perhaps in the beginning. I think what you're saying is it's not necessarily that it must be policy, but you just want to see one thing.
Yes, policy is an
Okay.
example of something that I think, we've
Got it.
talked about it, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be the roadmap. It can be, whatever. But I think in my mind, I think to have one thing where we can lay it out in the way that you're describing with clear expectations, guidelines, tangible assignments to people, that I think will be, to me, that would be the idea versus just the breaking up into 3 groups and tackling, 3 goals for the year, something. So you're correct. Yeah. It doesn't have to be policy. That just came to mind as something that feels doable to me, All right, Dan, sorry, go for it.
And
No worries. I'm patient. So I guess in support of, your position, Molly, I do agree that we run into risks when we try to divide and conquer. And I think just with the last year and the amount of disruption and challenge that's out there, that we're going to have even more challenge if we divide. So, even look at the community outreach aspect, whether COVID, it's been very disruptive in trying to get traction. And I believe that working together on one focus, we're going to get more done. And I think we're going to create more unity in what we're trying to develop. With respect to policy, I mean, it's not super exciting stuff, but I see policy as a foundational, informs other components that we really haven't touched up to this point. And I believe it's an amplifier in terms of the things that, Nancy suggested. And that if we do perhaps take a project-based, all in it together approach and front load policy, and maybe we'll set a target, right? In terms of what we want to get to before we set policy aside and then decide what's next, right? So it doesn't mean we're going to limit for the entire year that we're only going to talk policy. I think what we want to define is the goal of what we're trying to do with policy, establishing a framework for it, because I know in other conversations we've had, this is not new. Other groups out there have done it. And there are probably a lot of lessons learned. There are probably a lot of baseline things that we can pull together, quickly discern, and get a framework pulled together for some of the policy groundwork that we want to get in place that I believe will inform roadmap, that I believe will inform and strengthen, community outreach. And so I would be in support of working more in unison as a team, maybe taking a project-based approach, front loading something like policy, because it is something that's tangible. There's stuff out there for it. I think it's probably less disruptible in terms of where we're at. So and I don't think it's running contrary to what Nancy's suggesting. I think it's strengthening a resolve to getting things done.
Are there ways, do you know, Dan, to, or anyone, that we can get community input into some of those things? I guess, in terms of just getting, I think it's pretty clear that many people in the community don't know what sustainability committee is. They don't know what its purpose is. And I guess I'm kind of wondering how we, if it's possible in any way to involve people in that without necessarily being face to face, but or to kind of establish, is this a climate thing that we're generally going for? Is this, what is, do we want to restrict our look at this from pretty much that point of view, that seeming to be the most urgent thing on on the national plate? Well, not on the national plate, but I just think in terms of overall impact, how can we engage people in this without terrifying them, and also get them to understand that we are their advocates in these decisions.
Yeah, I guess, I guess I'm here. I'm definitely hearing what everybody's saying, but I'm also feeling like there are some like, to go back, Molly, to your first example. I obviously am completely supportive of us operating with best practices with mounds. I don't think that that's the responsibility of the sustainability committee. I think that that's something that should be coming forward from Park and Rec. And if the sustainability committee, because the mounds, mostly our mounds are on public, the mounds that we have control over, our public mounds are on parkland. And so anything that the sustainability can do to support Park and Rec in terms of them advocating for best practices, I'm all over it. But I feel like that's something that should be generated by Park and Rec, not by us.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I thought that would be something that we could inform for, we could provide Parks and Rec with information to then create, best practices. We have made it our mission, right, to inform other departments about how they can improve their practices.
Yeah.
So that's just an example of, and that's kind of what I've been doing between sustainability and parks is, convening and working with other people on this committee to provide examples of best practices to parks that then they can create their own policy about. So that's kind of what I meant. It was
Okay.
sort of like provide, putting in the hands of the appropriate department the information they need to, put a requirement about, electric vehicles in fleets, or, this and that, just things along those lines. I'm sorry if that wasn't clear.
Yeah, well, I guess just again, to use the mounds as an example, I would say I don't feel like this committee is in a position to recommend best practices, and that what Jake should be doing and is already done, as far as I know, because he has a relationship with Bill Quackenbush, is to go to Bill Quackenbush, who's the expert on taking care of mounds. He's responsible for the mounds all over the entire state of Wisconsin. And so, and I'm pretty sure that we are at least, so it's, I'd rather have Park and Rec be going to the experts than us having to become the experts.
Yes.
And going to Park and Rec. And that's just one example. And I know that wasn't, I don't want to get off track about the mounds, but that just seems to me like, so, and let me just use another example that on the policy where, let's just take developing a sustainable development policy for the city of Winona. The idea being that we would alter, ideally we'd be changing ordinances, right? As a result of that sustainable development policy, we'd be upping the ante in terms of what we expect of developers when they come into the city of Winona. There's a million, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a million communities out there that already have sustainable development policies right in our own backyard. However, as a city council member, I can honestly say, I think that that's probably something that would take more than a year. It's probably a long-term thing. Because it requires working with the staff and working with other committees and working with the city council to make that kind of a shift, to that kind of a and make the ordinance changes. So I guess I'm seeing, when I say, picking 3 things, let's say this year, I'm not suggesting that we're going to wrap up 3 things this year. I was just suggesting that we were, that because there seemed to be interest in all 3 by different individuals on this committee, could we pick 3, and whereas as another example, another policy that was listed on here, getting the sustainable purchases and practices as a section in each department, like that happened like that with DEI. It's on every agenda now across every single committee and with every department. And because it's on the agenda for every single committee and every single department, I think it's really moved the ball forward, because people don't sit through a lot of committee meetings sitting there saying, well, I haven't done anything. Well, my department hasn't done anything. Like they know they're going to be asked at the next meeting, what has your department done? Or what are you personally doing? And so I think that one would be an easy lift, to have that become a regular feature, if you will, for departments, which Brad already indicated he thought would be super helpful in terms of the dashboard and everything else, because departments are doing stuff around sustainability all the time. We just don't know about it. We're not tabulating it. And they're not necessarily tabulating it either. So anyway, so I think there's some things that would be some low-hanging fruit and easy lifts, and there's some other things that are going to be long-term things. So I guess I was thinking, and there's obviously diverse interests here. There's some people that would rather engage the community and do the kinds of national nights out and the events where we're tabling and trying to educate people. And then there are other people that really want to dive into big, hairy projects. So
If I can just interject a couple thoughts there, being the newest voice on the committee, I feel like I need to listen more than talk, but at least a couple observations. I think, policy is just one lever that we have in order to influence the sustainability in our committee. So it's probably part of the strategic plan or of the roadmap plan, right?
Yeah.
And even when you look under policy, I mean, there's hundreds of different policies we could pursue. You need to have a plan to decide where to expend your effort, right? Do you want to go after the burial mounds thing, or do you want to work on a reforestation ordinance for replacing diseased ash borer trees, or do you want to work on impervious surfaces and runoff? Like, there's a whole bunch of policies, some that are easy wins, some that could take a long time,
right.
Some that are going to get pushback from developers, right?
Right.
And there's some policies that are internal to city practices that we could change really quickly. Other ones that manifest themselves through ordinances that are going to require council meetings and public hearings and stuff like that, that are going to be much heavier lifts. So I really think no matter what we tackle, the first step is putting together a roadmap or a strategic plan so we can prioritize things. And policy could be part of that strategic plan. And I think having the whole committee together to work on that makes a lot of sense for the reasons some folks have already brought up. I will share just
What?
Lost you again.
Teresa, you're familiar with the energy innovation. What? Oh, sorry. Let me move a little closer to the Wi-Fi router. Maybe it'll help. Is my mic cutting
now
out?
You're back. Thanks.
Okay. So I was saying, Teresa, you're familiar with the Energy Innovation Grant because we worked on that with the school district to get this solar project done there. I was told a couple of weeks ago that the PSC is going to do another round of that funding. They haven't spent all that money, and it sounds like they're probably looking at the same sort of timetable, probably releasing a call for proposals in January. So like if we had a plan and we're ready to respond to that, that might be a really cool thing. The other thing that I learned about last week, The school district was also fortunate to get some funding from Focus on Energy, which is our state incentive program. And from what I've been told, they're setting up a new incentive that they're going to introduce next year that's going to be targeted at municipalities. Because they know municipalities don't qualify for federal tax incentives for solar, they want to create a special incentive for municipalities in Wisconsin that would be, well, the number that was kicked around would fund 26% of a system. So, and that wouldn't have to be solar, it could be other renewable energy systems through Focus too. But I think there's going to be some opportunities there in 2022. And if we were, you know, at least part of the way through having a strategic plan, it might position us to do something on that front.
So Ken, I just have one comment, and then Teresa, I'm going to go to you. And that is, you know, I think part of what we've struggled with as a committee is that, in fact, we have a strategic plan. The committee created not this committee, but a sustainability committee created a strategic plan. What now, probably 6 years ago. And as you know, as we all know, because we're in this work and committed to this work, it covers a ton. It's a, you know, it covers solid waste, it covers energy, it covers, you know, everything, right? So, but there are, to its credit, there, you know, it does have, you know, some recommended measurables and, you know, recommended goals for each one. But part of what we have struggled with as a committee is it's, you know, like, where do we start? Do we work on stormwater? Do we work on solid waste? Do we work on energy? Do we work on, I mean, I remember this conversation when I first came on the committee, that it was just like, I mean, this speaks exactly to what Molly was talking about. It was too much. There were too many pieces, and we were trying to get a handle on every single one of them. And so we kind of decided as a committee at that point, let's just focus on the energy piece, right? Which isn't to say we're ignoring stormwater, but ultimately, you know, but it's just to say we can't do it all. You know, and we don't have the staffing, and we don't have the structure to do it all. And so that's when we decided to go for the energy piece, or focus more on energy. So I guess my question becomes, do we need another whole strategic plan? Or are we talking about a strategic plan specific to energy, if we were going to go that route? If that was going to be the one project, to get a strategic plan together so that we could influence policy or other things as appropriate, or go after these grants.
Yeah, I think if we decided energy was the thing we wanted to focus on, you definitely need, you know, a plan or a roadmap, because, you know, think about all the facilities that the district operates, right? You can't do a dozen projects at once. So you got to pick and choose your, or prioritize which ones you bite off first, second, third sort of thing, and figure out which are the best return on investment for, I mean, it's taxpayer money we're going to spend. So, so we definitely need to do some, you know, and it's going to require some analysis, right? You got those decisions on data. So, or at least we should make those decisions based on data.
Right. And I think that's been part of the challenge too, because I know, certainly I can't speak for Molly, but I know as far as I'm concerned, like, for instance, when Brad was talking a few weeks ago about, you know, the fact that, you know, we'll fix the controls for the HVAC at the library, but then we don't invest the $600,000 in the rest of it. And I get that, like, I totally am sympathetic to what Brad is saying, but as a city council member, unless I know where that $660,000 is going and what the return on investment is going to be I can't vote for it. I mean, we just don't have that kind of capital, right? So, and we, you know, we could probably figure that out, but that's the piece that we've got to figure out. We've got to help or help other people in the same way that we've done it with the LED. So we're closer with the LED, but So if we do, I mean, is that the one project that people want to work on?
I would
Yeah,
be strongly in favor of a energy roadmap to support our resolution to achieve 100% clean energy by the year 2030. Am I remembering correctly?
right.
And as Ken was saying, when we analyze all the facilities and we find the one with the biggest financial return on investment, and we have a first very successful project, which includes heavy community outreach, engagement, education, facilities tours, you name it. When we bring the community along and we talk in terms of dollars that we're going to save, we build credibility. When we build credibility, the policies that we suggest will be received with a little more, with a little less resistance.
Completely concur. I guess I completely concur, and I hear you. I guess what I would say though is there's really only a couple of facilities worth in putting any energy into. Like, we're not going to put any money into the. I mean, probably the biggest return on investment would be the computer. I mean, our municipal facilities are much worse than the schools. The schools, I mean, almost all of our facilities are 50 years old. So really the library is going to stick around. City Hall is going to stick around. And maybe Public Works is going to stick around, and everything else we know is got to be replaced, and we don't want to spend any money on it. So it in that sense, it might make it easier, it might make it harder. But in terms of the plan, but there's just not that many.
Well, it's always easier to do renewable energy as part of new construction because you've got a blank slate to build with there,
Right.
and you can fold it into the construction budget ahead of time. But
Right.
this is where, like, if the district has a policy that says all new construction would be, minimum of LEED silver or LEED gold compliant, or all new construction will obtain at least X percentage of energy on site or something like that. Those kinds of policies could be developed as part of the strategic plan. And if we know, sort of looking out long term when the city might plan to replace those facilities, that becomes part of the roadmap then, right? So that you're staging and planning for those investments when they come up.
Okay, so if it's an energy roadmap that we're talking about is our singular project for the year. Well, first of all, does somebody want to make a motion that an energy 100% clean energy roadmap is what we want to make our project for this year?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Dan. Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I think this is I appreciate your flexibility, Nancy, and appreciate the input from the rest of the committee. I think focusing on something like this with, as Dan said, sort of like the ultimate goal being to inform policy, once we get our plan in place, our roadmap in place. And I think this feels attainable and relevant to our commitments to the city.
Okay.
Just kind of curious, being new to the group, you folks can educate me a little bit. Do we have sort of a baseline assessment of the city's energy consumption year over year patterns, and how much granular detail do we have broken down by by building, by space heat versus electricity? And are we just doing buildings, or are we also taking into account transportation in this as well? I mean, that just kind of bounds the scope of our project,
We recently, what was it, 2019 was the big facilities study that broke down every type of energy consumption across all facilities in the municipality, government buildings. I don't know about transportation. I mean, I'm sure we could do that, but it's a pretty small time operation. But that's what I'm hoping to figure out as far as like future RFP policies to kind of make sure that we're incorporating more electric vehicles and other things of that nature. So
Yeah, Molly's right that we have the 2019 report from Slipstream, which I think gives a good overview in terms of like more raw data that we have access to. Obviously, like all of our meters through MG&E, I have access to all of that data, and most of it going back, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, maybe more, is stored in the what's it called, Energy Star EPA portfolio, which is like an online database. So that, I think I have it all up to date now. So we have all that for our energy, or like electricity and natural gas usage. In terms of transportation, it's a little messier to put together, but we do have data from all of the like fuel cards, the like cards that everyone, all the city staff use to get gas for their different vehicles. And I think we do have a log of all of the like vehicles and equipment that use those fuel cards, but it's not super up to date. So there's data in various different places. And Brad might be aware of other data, but those are the ones that like I'm familiar with.
Yeah, I think just from his presentation a few weeks ago, if we pursue this route, it seems like we'd be working pretty closely with Brad to implement stuff going forward. And, you know, maybe the best thing we can do as a committee is figure out high priority projects for him and then ways to finance them and bring in external funding to realize that.
Right.
And I was going to say, I think that's an important part too. You know, we know on the roadmap of some of this future municipal, you know, funding that's coming. I think being able to groom and identify some projects that we think could be funded by that as part of the roadmap would be very timely. You know, Ken, to your point, I think you said, hey, if we had that ready by January, the timing would be opportunistic, you know, to be able to submit for that. So, I mean, I think it is important to think of maybe some of the immediate roadmap items that we might be able to work through to put ourselves in a good position for some of those upcoming opportunities.
Okay. So if this is, if we're going to work on an energy roadmap, I guess you know, to be honest with you, I don't, Ken, you may likely be the only person here that has the expertise. So, I mean, I'm happy to do research, but I honestly don't know what that roadmap looks like for other people. I mean, I don't even, you know, I mean, I could Google, see if there, I mean, I'm sure there are other communities that have done it, but but I'm just going to be honest about the fact that, you know, I certainly from a staff standpoint and from a committee standpoint, I don't know that any of the rest of us have the expertise to even bring the initial resources to bear to say, you know, what would it look like? What data would we need, and what, you know, what would it look like?
I think I'd be interested to see that Slipstream report for starters, so we have a feel where
Okay.
that was. I'm not familiar with that document, so I'd be interested to look at that and at least
Okay.
become familiar with it and see what's all included there. We've worked with Slipstream a bunch in the past. I serve on some boards with some of their folks. They do really good work. So if they've done a baseline energy assessment for the district, that's great to hear. And I assume that I keep saying the district because I'm used to working with the schools. I assume that the city also has some sort of a facilities master plan for all of the buildings that, you know, documents the age and the condition and of the roofs and when the last replacements were and stuff like that. You know, so that would be information that would probably feed into this as well. And then you know, obviously the utility bills is the other information that goes with that.
Right. Well, if why don't we so let me just ask in terms of if before we take a vote, and make this official. Does this mean we're not doing community outreach? We're not doing events, we're just gonna focus on this? No.
I would think that we can continue to do events in the way that we have been because we already have the materials for that.
Okay,
I mean, I sort of think of our event attendance as a separate facet
okay,
to our overarching goal for the committee.
Think
Okay.
Unless
we're-
anyone disagrees, but it's such a simple thing and we already have everything we need to do it. So
Yeah,
So-
I agree with that. I think they're easy enough to continue doing, and there are plenty of events we can easily, sit at a table at. It's a pretty easy burden for us to continue, I think, on top of additional projects.
So I see we lost Teresa, but I can
Yeah.
maybe say a few things on her behalf and also for myself. With the school district project, a major chunk of that solar project that's going on the high school, there's a big outreach component to that grant project.
yeah,
The idea is to use that as a focal point for educating other schools. They've got, staff from the district that are going to be presenting at, the Wisconsin Association of School Boards and Wisconsin Association of Environmental Educators, and to use that as sort of a model project that others could replicate. And I think that's a pretty powerful reason why that grant proposal got funded, is because they had that kind of community outreach built into the proposal, so that it wasn't just a one-off project that got funded. It was a project that would stimulate, copycats, right? Or, it would inspire other people to try and pursue similar goals.
mhm,
And it's also part of a larger roadmap for the district. That's the first project of several that they aim to do to eventually get solar on all of their schools in the district. So, to the degree that we can, pursue this, energy roadmap as part of a larger initiative, and not just doing one-off projects, but that they're projects that engage the community and educate the community, it makes it easier to get external funding.
right,
And Teresa's been really strong in championing that on the committee that we're on with the district. I will
Right.
tell you that that kind of community outreach is not my strong point. And because I have a 3-year-old at home, the major hours I have to devote to stuff fall between 8:30 and midnight, which is not the best time to be doing community outreach events.
Right.
My productive hours are once she goes to sleep at night. So,
right,
but that's not to say I don't appreciate the community outreach, because I do feel that's really important for the kind of work that we do. It's just, it's not my strong suit, and it's not a place where I'm in a position to contribute a whole lot. But certainly when we get to looking at technical reports and data analytics and trying to, formulate proposals and plans, I'm more than happy to sink my teeth into that sort of thing.
okay, great. That's very generous of you, Ken, and I appreciate it. And I obviously did not mean in any way to slight anybody else's expertise. I just know that.
I clearly have none, so I'm comfortable with the accusation, Nancy.
Just saying. And I'm really saying also, again, we promised that we would be attentive to the volume of staff time that we do have, which is limited. So I want to be attentive to the fact that we don't have, and nor does Brad. I mean, Brad's got his hands full with public work. So I just want to be sensitive to that. So Ken, assuming that I believe we now have Teresa by phone, because she can't get her internet to work.
You do. I'm here.
I'm glad to know
Good
I wasn't the
Lord.
only one with technical difficulties this evening.
Good Lord.
Yeah, it's not one thing, it's another. So I believe we need a vote. So we have a motion on the floor to make our energy roadmap, energy master plan, if you will, as a primary project for this committee for the foreseeable future. Recognizing that there'll be other things that will come up. It's not like we're only going to be focusing on that, but that's going to be our primary thing that we're going to bite off. All those in favor say aye.
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 Hi.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries. So seems to me from what Ken has said, the first thing we need to do is get that OEI slipstream report and perhaps other data.
I
And
think
then,
that's a good first step, is just getting the baseline information. Yeah.
right, get the baseline information. And then I know that there were several people in the survey. Again, thank you for taking the survey. That said, like Eau Claire or some other communities that might have done something similar already. If anybody else wants to do some research between now and the next meeting, with some examples of perhaps some roadmaps that other communities have put together, that I'm sure that would be welcome too. And then maybe next meeting, we have this particular topic on the agenda again. Does that sound like a plan? We good with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still would like to move forward on things like getting the staff to put sustainability on their reports. But Molly, I think you and I could probably convince Brian and the mayor of that.
Yeah.
You know.
The only thing that I think with that, Nancy, is like, maybe not, but with every department, I think it's easy for individuals and departments to maybe come up with more actionable items related to DEI than it will be for sustainability. And so I'm wondering how much we need to be informing and supporting those, those initiatives.
Right. That's
So,
a good point.
so that's the only thing I would say is if we put it on there, people might just not know what kind of things to come up with. So maybe we could at least, if we suggest that, again, which I'm not opposed to, we might just want to provide some tangible topics for discussion that committees can easily refer to when they want to dig into those conversations.
Well, I have to say, I'm kind of surprised and impressed that you think that it's easier for people to come up with DEI. So,
I mean, I just think, I don't know. I think we've had so much conversation about that specifically as a city.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's, I would say it's like as is climate change and, sustainability. I feel like that's another just huge issue that people are being confronted with these days. And I think they have a lot more information to access about how they can be personally and professionally responsible in those ways.
Right. Because there are definitely, just for everybody's benefit, there are, all of our departments, I think, are much more aware than they used to be, and are doing active things. They're not even necessarily like, I can remember when we first did the Riverfront Park, and the day before we opened the park, I was down there and Jake was mowing with an electric mower. And I didn't even know we owned an electric mower. And he's like, oh yeah, I just bought it this is our second one. Well, Park and Rec's been buying electric tools. Who knew? I mean, and our police departments have been buying hybrid vehicles. We knew about those. And Public Works and Park and Rec have been planting lots of trees, replacing lots of trees and that kind of thing. So I do. And we have made significant investments in stormwater and other things like that. So I do think they're there, but you're right that it may be more challenging. So anyway, I think we have a plan around this project. I appreciate the discussion and the sage advice as always from each of you. And we'll look forward to revisiting, starting again next time. Okay,
So,
on this particular issue.
Nancy, your comments make me think of one other thing that I'd add that I noted in the survey. Having just advocated for focusing on energy, now I'll add a contrary point. I think one of the places in the community that right now is very visible for people on sustainability is with our urban trees. With all of the trees that are dying due to ash borer, there are tree crews going. I mean, you can't walk through the neighborhood without seeing chainsaws going and chippers every day.
Yeah.
And it's something that's super visible, unlike a lot of these other sustainability initiatives that you don't really know if something's sustainable when you're thinking about where your water goes down the sewer or what you're putting on your lawn. The impact on our urban forest canopy is like staring you in the face every day as you walk through the neighborhood. And if we wanted to have a strong sort of public outreach initiative, I think that's a place that would get a lot of traction with residents fast, encouraging replacing those street trees.
Right.
So I'm not suggesting that, we need a separate plan for that. Those might be some quick hit victories that we can do with, having a program that's more than just once a year on Arbor Day sort of thing to celebrate planting trees. A little bit more aggressive, campaign to get people to put trees in the terraces on their property, or, anything we can do to raise extra funds for Parks and Rec to put more replacement trees on the city property as they have to remove those. I think that would generate a lot of support in the community.
Agreed. And Ken, it's probably something that is would be a good thing for all of us to talk about over a beer, because Teresa and I and Chris, among other people, have tried already. And
I don't know if you saw my face, Ken, but when you started talking, it was just like, there's a long sordid history of this conversation among this group. So
yeah. But for the benefit of you as a citizen, know that your city council has voted to increase the tree budget every year to make sure that we're replacing 1-to-1, even though old trees are 10 times better than new trees when it comes to sequestration. And we also have a tree donation fund. But
Oh yeah, I've contributed to that.
yeah. But a point well taken. And we will revisit it at some point. It's not like we haven't attempted it before. So with that, I think we should move to the budget, if it's okay with everybody, in the interest of time. The 2022 budget.
And if anyone wants, I can share my screen with that
That'd be
budget
fabulous.
table.
thank you very much.
Can you do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I included the last year's, or the budget that we have for this year, just for some context, and then the sort of proposed budget that Brad and I had put together for 2022.
Right.
So
So Brad reached out, in the interest of full disclosure, Brad reached out to Molly and I prior to work on this budget, suggesting the shift from what we have from 2021 to 2022, specific to, again, trying to appropriately fund the expertise we do have on staff, namely Elisa's position, and make sure that she's adequately compensated, or even if she were to leave, that person is adequately compensated, and to otherwise shift some dollars. So you'll see this year, obviously, we had, aside from that position, we had a whopping budget of $2,500 devoted to, maybe if we shrink down the size a little bit so we don't have to scroll quite as much. There we go. Better. It might just be my screen. You might all have big ass screens, but I don't. In any case, as you can see, this is what we had this year for Earth Day: $500, $1,000 for community related campaigns, $500 for professional development, $500 for marketing and printing, which really isn't, in my view, a whole lot different than community campaigns and public education. This position. And what we're proposing for 2022, as I said, is to more adequately fund this position as it is, while we continue to advocate for a more permanent position and more hours, and then essentially cutting back on otherwise the overall dollars that we have. And know that if for some reason, over the next couple of months, a couple of 3 months before we get to approving this budget, or even after we get to approving this budget, if we put together we made some decisions around how we were going to get to that roadmap, the process that we were going to use to get to that roadmap, and we decided that we needed to hire somebody to help us to crunch data or to facilitate or whatever to build this roadmap, we can always amend a budget. We, meaning Molly and I, as your city council representatives, can always put in an amendment, advocate for something additional to this before the budget is passed. And then after the budget is passed, if it's a one-off expense, let's say we decided we needed to hire somebody and it was going to cost us 15 grand or something like that. If it's a one-off expense, i.e. something that's not going to go, year over year, it's also something that we could propose to the city council even after the budget passes to come out of the fund balance. We don't use that, we use that very sparingly because those are our reserves, but we can use them in cases where it's a one-time thing and we all feel as a council it's really important. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah, that's helpful.
So one question about this, Lisa, would be, didn't we pay more than $250 for resource solutions?
We didn't. So 250 was what we ended up paying for the event. Yeah. And Brad and I were also surprised when that invoice came in, because I think when we had originally talked to them, they said it would be 500 for the event,
exactly.
which is what we had in the budget this year.
Okay.
But it was only 250. And we double checked with them when we were putting this together, what the cost would be to host the event again next year. And they said, yeah, 250. So we left it at 500 in here in case we had other costs related to the event. But yeah, technically, if we just want to contract with Resource Solutions again, the event cost could be 250. But
okay.
I know other people had mentioned that it would be nice to have like paper shredding or some other services, given that the first year went well. So we thought we'd leave in a little bit of extra money just in case.
Have we been given, Molly, I don't recall being the actual budget schedule being shared yet.
I don't think we have like meetings scheduled. I think, are we talking operating specifically right now?
Yeah, so in other words, we have time. This
Yes.
is the first pass, because operating wouldn't happen until October, right?
Yep. Correct.
Okay. All right. So what do people think about this?
I think it's good.
Nancy, this is Teresa. Just sorry for this way to join the meeting. But the recycling event was more successful than I ever thought it would be. I was completely blown away at how it went over. And with this cost, there's absolutely no reason that we should not do it every year.
I would agree. I would agree. And if there were some other things, other uh, I mean, I don't know that we don't have to add other things because they certainly took pretty much, it was much more than I thought it was mostly going to be e-cycling. And the reality is they took much more than electronics. They were taking
Right,
appliances
right.
and mowers and all kinds of things. I mean, we could add other services. I mean, we had styrofoam that also was successful, that people brought. And we could add other things if we wanted to, but I completely concur that it was worth doing.
Was the price low because we chose against certain certain collection streams? Have we figured out why the price was lower than what we
Probably
originally
haven't
thought?
asked.
Yeah, we haven't asked. I could double check with Brad, but I don't think like we weren't ever choosing between different like levels of service. It was just like
Okay.
they have like a
Yes.
contract for doing events like this, and that's yeah.
And
As
it
far as
was-
I know, we didn't ever choose to like only do certain things and not collect other items. It was just
Got it.
they have their list of things that they can collect, and that's what they collected at the
And
event.
there wasn't anything in their contract that said based on poundage if they got, because
Yeah.
they were getting, right, because they were getting money for what
Mhm.
they were collecting.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Right, that if they got over a certain amount, so it made it more worth their while, they charged us less. I don't know.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
anyway, I would say let's go for it. Obviously.
I would even advocate for doing it on the same weekend every year, and maybe like a mid-year advertisement, just, so that people know that they can count on it again, and so that they save their items.
Mhm,
Mhm.
mhm.
Yeah. I mean, since we know that we'll be doing it again, and certainly if we make it an annual thing, we can, we can put out some like advertisements or information about it
Mhm.
earlier in the year to let people know, like, save up your stuff. We'll have an event for you to recycle it all in April.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Okay, well, if you think, if folks think, this is just a first pass, if you think of other things that you feel like we absolutely should be budgeting for this next year, or as a result of our research over the next couple of months around an energy plan, we feel like there's some things we absolutely have to have, whether it relates to data crunching or facilitation or whatever. Let's, keep that in mind, but otherwise, I think, as I said, this is just the first pass. We don't have to vote on it tonight. We just thought we would share it this evening. Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks.
That takes us to number 7, DEI discussion items. Does anybody have anything? Obviously, you have the burial mound
Mhm.
practices here, Molly.
Yep, and we don't really need to delve into that, just that I have shared multiple resources with parks, and Sue also has been helpful in sort of accruing some of those things. But hopefully we will get, some forward momentum on that, and I will keep you in the loop. This is one of those things that, I agree that it should be parks' responsibility to create the policy, but if there's a way that we can do like a, like sustainability committee park day where we, help out or, do some weeding or whatever at this park or around the mounds in the future, I just think it would be good to have some best practices in place. I also mentioned the potential changes to the RFP matrix, which I think would be not only related to sustainability, but to DEI, as I was mentioning with, if we can do contracts as a sustainability committee, if we ever have that opportunity, or if we are assisting other departments and projects, and we can put a greater, point percentage or emphasis or whatever on certain types of organizations to do, surveys for us, or, engineering, or the slipstream project, things like that. If we can work with companies that are a little bit more diversely staffed, or woman owned, I think we should just keep that in mind in the future. But that conversation will be ongoing with Mary and Brian.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm all over it, and I think that should definitely be something that's citywide. I mean, that should be everything that comes out of the municipality.
I agree.
Oh, yeah.
But those are just like two recent things that I've had on the brain. So
Yeah. Just to go back to the burial mounds for a minute, Molly, just so I do know that I have brought up with Jake, and I know that this came up in the conversation, the university project.
Yep, we talked about that too.
So yeah, because I know Bill and Jesse, who is the faculty member for that project, asked why the signage wasn't, because that project included not only maintenance, but also quite a bit of time was spent by the students providing signage in the Ho-Chunk language.
Mm-hmm.
That was supposed to go on our three most important mounds, I think one of which was at Woodlands. And when I talked to Jay, and so Jesse and Bill have asked me, like, where are they? Why haven't they happened? And I think what Jake told me was that they had a hard, expense-wise, they originally struggled with it, but he had somebody else, and that he was going to be doing it at Woodland, since we've been investing in Woodland this year. And that the other parks were going to be done but anyway, if you could follow up with that, that would be great.
Sure. We did talk about it at our last meeting, that the signage specifically. So I will round back on that.
Okay. No, too, that I don't want to get too excited, but I think that just from a plan commission perspective, there's a lot of new development coming down the pike. And Winona's become a hot place all of a sudden for developers. And, it's a hot time for development. And we're pushing on all fronts and I'm pretty confident that some of that development will include some much more diverse and affordable housing options. So know that that's stuff it's good stuff that's being worked on. Any other updates from committee members or items to consider for future agendas? Sarah, what's
Nancy,
going on? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just wondering if it might be possible to put some sort of a target due date or deadline for us to have the roadmap completed. And just, have a start date, have an end date, and just, for me, I think I work better that way. And
Completely
I think maybe in the
agree.
past, yeah.
I completely agree. I would like to suggest that gets set either next month or the month after that, because I think until we get a handle on what data we have,
yeah,
and what kind of the parameters of what a plan might look like, I think it would be hard, at least for me, and until I know what the process is and I know what I'm going, what the desired outcome is, I can't set deadlines.
Yeah,
right?
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Okay.
Perhaps Ken could maybe make a short list. I can't see your face right now, Ken. I'm sure you're grinning ear to ear. I'm going to ask you to do some work. is that something that maybe Ken could just put together a short list of here's the data that needs to be collected before our next meeting so that we can look stuff
Yeah.
over?
I can try and do that. You want me to just put it in an email and send it to the whole committee?
That'd be great.
Okay.
That'd be great. Any other items for future agendas or updates from anyone? Awesome. I was going to ask you, Sarah, is there any updates from the county? Anything on the sustainability front that's what's going on in the county?
Nothing comes to mind right away, other than we are heading into the budget process. We'll start having budget hearings in September, just like you all at the city. So if there's, things people would like to advocate for in terms of sustainability from, managing the landfill, some of those more county specific things, now is the time. So now in September, basically.
So Sarah, if you didn't see that article about the salt, centralized water treatment related to lessening the amount of salt in the lakes. I don't know if you saw that article that Lynn sent.
I don't think
sent to me,
so.
but it was in the paper. But I would be curious because certainly I know that it's something that Lynn feels very strongly about. They've done in other communities where literally we could all get rid of our water softeners because and the amount of salt that it takes to manage our water is a whole lot less, which is a whole lot healthier for our lakes. So I'll send you that article.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'd be interested to see that link too. I think I saw a bit of an email thread, but I don't know that there was a link to an article that I had seen.
Okay. All right.
It turns out I actually know the gentleman. His name's Chris Catlin, that runs the largest lime softening plant in the U.S. over in the Twin Cities. It's not a small capital investment to run something like that. I mean, it would probably require not just the city of Winona, but all of Madison Metro to put together a system like that and convert us over to lime softening.
Right. Or maybe something that the county would like to invest.
I was gonna
in, which
say,
is why
yeah.
I was suggesting that Sarah might want to be involved. So I'll send out the link to everybody.
Great.
And I appreciate the update. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'm sorry to butt in.
Yeah.
Could I just one more little comment on the sustainability front? The Winona Grove School District is still moving forward with their plans to install very large array on the high school rooftop. However, the project has been delayed due to what I was told was a COVID outbreak at one of the factories that is supplying our panels. Because of the requirement of our federal grant, there's a Buy American clause. And so the United States-based company, and Ken, you can fill in here if I'm missing something, is unable to get us the panels in a timely manner. And we've delayed the project until the spring because it needs to start, ahead of fair weather. We can't have the panels be going up in the winter. So, but still on target, and still plenty of ways to make lemonade out of it. Might even all be for the best. Who knows?
Great. Thank you for that update. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I would love to make that motion.
Would somebody love to second that motion?
I can second. Oh,
Okay.
Go for it, Sarah.
great. That's all right. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
hi.
All right. Thank you all. Enjoy your evening.
Thanks,
Lisa,
everybody.
Thank you again.
Bye, folks.
Everybody, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye. Great. Thanks, everyone.